Hi everyone, welcome back to Looking at Transformers Movies Part 2, Revenge of the Fallen, the genre and the contemporary blockbuster. My name is Greg, and we're just here to continue our literal video series about the Transformers movies leading up to Rise of the Beasts. And I'd like to introduce my co-host, Tommy.
Hi guys, it's Tommy here. I came back surprisingly.
Sorry, I should say reintroduce. Tommy will be here for every episode, of course. Um, yeah, let's just dive into it. So this one we're going to focus on the second Michael Bay Transformers movie, Revenge of the Fallen, and how you can look at it through the genre lens, essentially. And we're kind of going to define what that means, because I think there's still some contentious uh, conversations about what it really means to like define genre. But this one should be pretty broad, because we're just going to be naming our genre focus real quick. Tommy, what do these four films have in common? What genre do they fall under? Kind of already said it.
Fantasy?
I was going for
What?
blockbuster, but yeah, maybe a bit of fantasy too, obviously.
I mean,
But like you,
blockbuster. Well,
yeah,
is blockbuster really a genre though?
that's what we're gonna look at today, Tommy. Is blockbuster a
Yeah.
genre, or is it just a way that we describe, the size of the movie? But yeah, I mean, like
It's
you're saying, Tommy, go ahead.
movies are only blockbusters after they make money.
Yeah, to a certain extent, but at the same time, aren't films designed to be blockbusters sometimes, especially nowadays? Like, we wanted this to be a blockbuster.
That is true.
Yeah, there's plenty of
There.
flops. After Earth, as much as I love it, it was designed to be a blockbuster, but like you're saying, it did not make money. But I still can't help but think like, that was supposed to be a blockbuster in Sony's eye. Um, but yeah, then we got like Transformers, which is like action sci-fi. We got It, which is horror. Lord of the Rings, which is fantasy. Shrek, which is like fantasy comedy. But I'm curious about Shrek. How big? It must have been designed to be a blockbuster, right? It's just like the cast and everything. Um,
I mean, I doubt that it was designed to be a blockbuster. The movie It was designed to be a blockbuster because I don't know.
Oh, you don't think so? You think I guess Joker's a good one too, right? Like Joker, nobody,
No,
Warner
I wouldn't
Brothers
even.
thought that was going to make $1 billion.
There's no way Warner Brothers thought that was. I wouldn't even count Joker either. So like. No, I would have just, if I were you, I would just have replaced it with Harry Potter or something, and that would have made more sense.
That's a good point. I guess Lord of the Rings was the fantasy rep, but that's fair. I was just, but also like you're saying, right? It became a blockbuster because it's the highest grossing horror film, at least when it came out, right? Has something surpassed it since then? I don't think anything has.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm curious about its budget. I'm gonna look that up real quick, just because I'm a little
Okay.
curious. It 2017 budget. Okay, yeah, like $40 million. But I think some of those Blumhouse movies are supposed to be blockbusters too, to a certain extent. Those are obviously even smaller budgeted. All right. Um, so yeah, let's try to figure out what we mean by blockbuster in this sense, and to whittle that down, really, we can ask my critical question: what is on screen in an action blockbuster? What can we determine these films' value based on what is included in each shot, or even what shots are included in the final film? So, really, what I want us to think about today is just what are the Transformers films as blockbusters declaring we value in movies based on what's in them and somewhat what people are, um, how people are responding to the films too, but at the same time, like when the film's just there, we can't just the film isn't always going to get the response that it's designed to get, right? So, all
Whatever you
right.
say. Okay.
Just bear with me, Tommy. It'll make some kind of sense by the end, I promise. And when
Okay.
we're thinking about things that film value, we can think about relationships, death, and violence in
Oh,
these
fun.
movies. I know. And then just taking a look at our sample film, Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen. Um, Pretty infamous film, right? I mean, from my perspective, is this film lives in such a weird um, place in just popular pop culture, I guess. Where I mean, not that it's not a classic film by any means, but I feel like when Transformers movies are brought up, this one's still cited as like quote unquote the worst one, even though people have seen the other films may declare one of the future sequels as worse than this one, even. But like Transformers 2 has this like default, oh, Transformers 2, that's just a horrible film. Um, what was I listening to? One of the now playing reviews. I think Jacob said something about like, oh, I love Brown Arrow films. Like Transformers 2 is fun because it's such a big budget film. That's such an awful thing to watch. And it's like he pointed out Transformers 2 in particular is all I'm pointing at. Like he didn't go for 3, 4, or 5 in particular. He went for 2, which I find very interesting. Any
Yeah.
thought?
No, I mean it's it's definitely an insane movie, and I remember like when it came out, it got like the worst reviews ever, and then I saw it, and then more or less what I thought when I was 13 and saw this movie is more or less what I think now, but more of an academic sense because I'm not as much of an idiot as I was when I was 13. I'm still pretty much an idiot, but in a different way. So we'll discuss that.
Yeah, it was the punching bag of 2009. It felt like, and I remember, this is actually this is the only one of the LaBeouf era I saw in theaters when it first came out. Um, and that was only because it was the family movie of the week. Like we were going to see it as a family. I didn't have any choice in the matter, and I wasn't interested at all in these movies up to that point. I don't even think I had seen the first one. And then I remember my reaction being, I think Optimus Prime died in that movie, but he came back at some point. So I was not
Yeah,
understanding this film.
I definitely saw this one in theaters too because my brothers and sisters all went to go on like a Wednesday afternoon for some reason.
And this is the highest grossing one domestically too, just in terms of American dollars. It's not the highest grossing worldwide, but American dollars, it's the one that made the most money here. And I think a lot of that was just hype for the people liking the first one, right?
Sure. Huh.
So I'll be
Ooh.
honest, there were people that came out of this though excited about it. It wasn't like universally everybody like a movie like that. I think about is Shyamalan's Last Airbender. Like there's a movie where everybody came out of it not happy with what they saw. Where here it was probably split like 50-50. Like half the audience had fun, the other half was pissed off.
I mean, I guess as someone who is well, we'll talk about how I felt later on.
All right, curious.
Yeah.
Definitely curious to know that, which is probably a good thing for me to do for my co-host. Tommy, will you read the synopsis for me?
All right. As the battle for Earth continues, Michaela and Sam must decide if they will stay together as Sam goes off to college, while Michaela stays to support her father, Optimus Prime, who dies at least once in this movie.
Yeah, I take my first viewing of this film to heart. I think I might be stealing a Spill.com joke too. I think like Corey said, like Optimus Prime dies like 3 or 4 times in this movie. That's okay. All right,
Yeah.
so like I said, we're going to focus on some relationships, some death, and some violence in this analysis of Revenge of the Fallen. So, where are we picking up with Sam Michaela? Without, we can look at the clips if we need to, but just in terms of Sam Michaela's relationship, especially in comparison to the first film, do we think that there's a solid couple in this at the start of this movie? Why do you think they're still in this relationship? What do you think is going on with them, Tommy?
Oh God, I wish I knew. When I saw the movie, it's like, okay, they're just there for the sake of it's a movie and they need to be together. And they have Megan Fox is better in this movie, and they have cute little banter. And it's all good stuff. It's I guess they're still off that whole line from the movie Speed, where couples staying together under extreme circumstances never seem to work out. Clearly, it's lasted for 2 years under the extreme circumstances category.
Hmm.
Um, 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 Clearly they fucked because I'm sorry. Clearly they made sweet, sweet love because of the line that Sam's mom said at the college campus. So that's there.
Yep.
Um, they're clearly kissing over some whoever's saying the "Don't Let Me Go" song. I don't even remember who said "Never Say Never." The Fray, over the Fray. They were
Yeah.
kissing over the Fray, saying goodbye.
Yes.
The soundtrack's doing most of the heavy lifting where the soundtrack and the actors doing most of the heavy lifting, where the script and story is not in this case. But hey, good camaraderie, I guess.
Okay. And
You
do you
know,
think it's better than the first film? That's
yes,
that's that's the first question. All right. Yeah, I'd say this time like they seem a little more relaxed around each other for sure, and of course that can just be natural development of like becoming a couple. Obviously, the first film, it's like they become a couple under the guise of it just being they went on this action movie adventure, so of course they're gonna hook up. Um, and then this one, I think it's sort of a funny dynamic that she doesn't, she doesn't want to go off to college with him, even just to like maybe she doesn't want to go to school, but she could move up there with him, maybe find a job, doing something with um, her mechanical skills. But yeah, it seems like she wants to stay home. Yeah,
Yeah, the screenplay never really explains it, so I don't know how I'm supposed to. So
I think you're supposed to think they were they were together in the last movie, so they're gonna stay together in this one.
I mean, really, they just want to find a decent excuse for the whole Robo Chick thing, romantic comedy misunderstanding thing to happen.
There's
I'm
that,
sure we're gonna get.
and there's this whole
Yeah.
competition with them about like trying to prove who loves or who's going to say "I love you" first, right?
Oh yeah, that thing. You're right. What the hell was that for? I don't even know. That just seems dumb. That's a movie thing. That only exists in movies.
Yeah. You want
Yeah.
to anything else, or should we move on?
Let's move on.
All right. All right. And this is where I think the film gets really interesting, to be honest. I'm curious to see what you think of it. You mind if I introduce some of this?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So for me, I don't know if it's the most interesting thing in Revenge of the Fallen to me, but it's definitely one of where in the first film, the parents are basically given no moments of sentimentality. I don't know if anybody's given any moments of sentimentality in the first film. Um, where the dad is teasing Sam right off the bat, and we can kind of look at some of the clip. We can take a look at some of this clip. He made this deal with his dad about give me $2,000 and 2 A's and I'll pay for half your car. So, for like a $4,000 car, he pulls this stunt on him where he takes him to a really nice car dealership, where they sell Porsches, and then it's all prank. He's just gonna be like, oh, we're not getting you a Porsche, and that's kind of where their relationship's at most of the movie. There's one moment in the film where the dad does stand up for Sam, when John Turturro shows up, right? And
Yeah.
he's Turturro's trying to take Sam away, arrest him without, any real proof of authority or anything like that, under the suspicion of him harboring aliens. And then Dad steps in the middle of it and says, "No, you're not taking my son anywhere." And I think that moment works on its own, but like that's the emotional high for the parents, right? It's like they don't get anything else, any more serious scenes like that. They're mostly just treated as buffoons, and honestly, just that they're picking on Sam the whole time. And the way I feel about Sam, that's fine. But it's sort of a funny dynamic that, like, there's just no emotional moments like you would get in an ET movie, right? It's all pretty cynical with their relationship.
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. Yes.
All right. And then, so what's interesting to me is we start Revenge of the Fallen, right? Oh, the video doesn't work. I'll just describe it. Sam's going off to college, and his dad does have this moment where he pulls him aside and says, "We're really proud of you." And mom's already crying, and the dad starts to cry a little bit, so it's a little more emotional. I think you could just, you can maybe choose the argument, well, it's a sequel, it's time to get a little more emotional the way that, part twos often do. But, given these movies of being, I think a heavy criticism about these movies is often just that they're the same movie over and over again. And I'm seeing that in many ways in terms of plot structure and just like the similar action beats happening. But I'm seeing Bay allow his actors to get a little more emotional on screen this time, and I'm finding that pretty interesting, and especially where that goes in the climax. So that's the thing about Revenge of the Fallen that always has me the most intrigued is how emotional Bay allows the film to get. What are your thoughts, Tommy, about the dad
I
stuff?
mean, I mean, if you're talking about the emotional scene in the like Revenge of the Fallen, I'm just finding it like just a very like bombastic, crazy, comedic version of that one moment with Andy's mom at the end of Toy Story 3 where she's crying about her kid going to college. And so the idea is, what if we made the whole kid going to college, the parents emotional about it, but we'll go to the extreme about it for the sake of being comedic. And one of the things I like about this movie is that Michael Bay is not afraid to do that and gives great entertainment value for me as a viewer. Whereas a lot of the character moments in the first movie was watered down, probably because Spielberg had more of a. It's probably because like too many cooks in the kitchen, where it had to be watered down because Bay wasn't given as much autonomy as a director as he was for this one because he proved himself for the first movie. So he's making these scenes happen. So
Well, when you
it's
say
all for entertainment.
When you say bombast, are you talking about the emotional scenes, or are you just talking about the energy of the action scenes?
I'm talking about the opening scene where it's like the mom's crying over the booties and the dad's like, "Oh, you're going to college, great," and just kind of indifferent about it. And then Sam's mom is hugging him, and then while crying, and Sam's like, "See, Dad, this is like how parents are supposed to react to their kids going in the world."
Hmm.
And then we could go later in the movie if you want to, or you're going to save that to later.
Oh yeah, I have a little slide about the climax with the dad.
Okay,
Um,
then I'll save myself for later.
yeah, and so I mean, it's interesting the way you describe that because if I mean, people would mostly associate that more sentimentality schmaltz even with Spielberg, right? But it seems like Spielberg backed off from this production a little bit more, and it's more Bay, um, but it's played more into the sentimentality, which is kind of interesting, right?
Yeah, sure. I don't find it that sentimentality in the beginning. I just find it crazy.
Okay.
Like, yeah, I don't necessarily
Oh,
find it
yeah.
sentimentality.
I mean, yeah, early on, I don't know, that moment with the dad, I'm a little like, okay, I'm surprised this is in here. Especially just compared to how we're introduced to him in the first movie. Um, I'm a little surprised it's in there, but yeah, the where it's gonna go later, I'm gonna yeah have comments about. We'll get to that. I got some
Yes.
quick spoilers here for the Avengers and Star Wars Episode One: The Phantom Menace. So if you haven't seen these two films, I'm jealous, but you know what? I love this Star Wars movie. I still don't like this Avengers movie that much,
Oh, well, okay.
but they've got some good visual storytelling to help explain this next one.
Okay. Well, I'm not gonna. Well, like that's time before I have my comments on that.
I know we'll do it in our Star Wars Avengers battle video,
Oh, of
our
course.
Phantom
Great.
Menace Avengers battle video.
Oh,
All right.
good.
Let's take a look at these two shots real quick, though. What elements are similar between these two series of shots? What type of shot follows the killing blow of a dying character?
Someone screaming.
Someone screaming and going, "No!" Yeah,
No.
that's pretty basic editing language, right? Like you see the fight, killing blows delivered, and then cut to someone going no to get a reaction shot.
Yes, that's when you know they gotta be avenged.
Yeah, that tells the audience that character's upset about that death.
Yes, absolutely.
Now let's look at Jazz. Do you know where I'm going with this, Tommy?
Oh yeah, which one was? Oh yeah, did he die? Oh yeah, that robot that died. I forgot about that. I just watched the first Transformers.
Let's take a look at his death scene real quick. All right, so
Oh,
Megatron's
okay,
got him.
great.
He's flying up with Megatron, and Megatron's gonna grab him. Jazz is like, "You want a piece of me?" And then Megatron's gonna snap him in half, and that's it.
Of course he is.
So there's
That's
that shot of
well,
that guy looking through the binoculars, but he's looking at the tank Decepticon getting up, so it's completely unrelated to Jazz, right?
oh, of course. No one gave a crap about Jazz.
Yep. And then my favorite part of this whole thing is when Optimus rolls up. Blah 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 blah. Transform. Optimus rolls up. He transforms. He's ready to fight Megatron. Megatron's still holding Jazz's body, even though it's been like 8 minutes. And then they just fight. And
Of
Optimus makes
course.
no comments about Jazz.
Who care? I don't remember who Jazz was, so
I
that tells
know.
you. That's
But do you think you might have remembered if another character reacted to Jazz's death?
probably not either. Not gonna
Okay.
lie.
Okay. To me, that's, I think, just part of filmmaking is if Optimus cared, I might have cared. Not that I care too much about Optimus in the first film, but just like, most people watching the movie can remember Optimus as a character enough, right?
Hmm.
So if
Sure.
Optimus reacted to the death, if Sam reacted to the death, and Michaela reacted to the death, we might have remembered Jazz's death, and we might remember Jazz as a character in the movie. Not saying it'd be like, oh my god, I remember Jazz, he's such a great character. Just that you would remember that happened in the film because the filmmaking would be telling you this is important.
Okay.
And then go ahead and keep going with that. And then it also just makes me call into question, what do we think about the robots as characters? And that the first film, and I kind of compare to do that. I was comparing the two scenes between the first two scenes we see with Optimus and Sam, and in the first movie, um, it's solely about exposition, I would say, right? Because the Autobots crash on
Uh-huh.
Earth, and they're just explaining what's going on. Obviously, you kind of need that. These giant robots come up to you. You kind of want to know what they're about. But I've seen movies where central characters meet, and there's some sort of like emotional point to it, right? I don't
Hmm.
know. This thing's been on my mind for a while. I don't know why. In 22 Jump Street, right? When um when Channing Tatum's character meets the hot blonde guy, what's his name? Uh, the
It's
Overlord guy.
no, yeah, it's the guy who like would be the evil Captain America. Goldie
Oh yeah,
Hawn's son, Wyatt Russell, Russell,
Wyatt Russell.
yes,
Oh yeah, he's Kurt Russell's son. I forgot. Um,
yeah,
yeah, so like when they meet in 22 Jump Street, they just
and they
get
do
to
the
have a
meet
little
cute with
moment. Yep, the literal meet
yeah with
cute.
the little meet the cute tip.
It's a joke. It's a joke for the scene, but at the same time, it's like they have some kind of connection there. They're getting along. They're both really into football. Something that they connect with, right? Where it's like the Autobots show up and they're just kind of spouting exposition. They don't. Their only relation is just something that Sam physically has, right?
Hmm.
And then, but in Transformers 2, I think the tone of that scene is very different from the first film, where Optimus is just coming to Sam and asking for his help, and
Yeah, like
um,
Sam, help us out, Sam. No, no, please, man, you're our only hope. No, I'm going to college.
yeah,
Okay.
and I find this somewhat of an. So, what do you think about all that? Let me ask you first.
I like the scene in Revenge of the Fallen where it's a hero's journey thing where it's like you need to do this. I'm denying the call. Okay, well we may not we may have lost our hope. It's a hero's journey thing. They do it in Star Wars. They do it all the time. It's done
The
perfectly
refusal of the call.
passable. Yeah, the refusal of the call. It's done perfectly passable in this movie.
Yeah, and I do find that very interesting with Shia's character because in the first film, he's to me he's egotistical. To me, he's really selfish. Um, but in this film, they're kind of playing with that. Like, it's a harder question though for me. Where in the first film he's just doing stuff, and I just can't believe how selfish he is. Here though, I think they're raising a good point that it's like they're asking this kid to join the noble, dangerous alien war, um, and he doesn't really want to do that. And I think that does match with Sam's character, unlike a Luke Skywalker who did want to go off to war and become a great hero. Sam just kind of wanted to fit in the first film. Like he just wanted the car to get the girl and just be popular at school. He wasn't trying to be great necessarily. So to sort of see him refuse Optimus here, I think is kind of an interesting situation for a blockbuster film to deal with in that way, where Sam is just the film is willing to say this kid doesn't want to be a hero. He just wants to fit in. But he has this the Optimus character is just asking him to help him, um, and the film's just kind of forced him to follow that destiny, which I find more interesting than like I don't know. I don't want to compare necessarily to just saying like, oh, this is objectively better than someone who's seeking greatness, but I don't know. I find it somewhat of an interesting situation for Sam and a protagonist in this kind of film to be in. Um,
Uh
and we're going to see how that affects him in the next film.
huh. Oh yes, yes, we'll get there.
And then just comparing, Optimus's death to Jazz's death. Obviously, I
Oh,
know Optimus is like the main Transformer character. Of course, we're going to recognize his death compared to someone like Jazz, but at the same time, the film is actually doing that, right? I mean, these people complain, fans complain all the time about how these films don't care about the Transformers. I think Optimus's death has an impact on this story. It's not just something that happens and then we just move on.
yeah, no, they need a prime. He's the only prime they got, so they got to bring him back.
Hmm.
And
And like, yeah,
he's like the main robot that everyone knows about. So if you know about Transformers, you know about Optimus Prime. So therefore, the death should have an impact. And I think like it's the only thing in the cartoons I know because when Andrew watched the cartoons as a kid, he was like, "They killed Optimus Prime. He was killed by his arch nemesis." He was so upset.
oh wow, Andrew was Andrew went through that. I'm so sick because that's an infamous. That's an infamous thing. You've listened to the Now Playing reviews. Um, Optimus dying in the cartoons traumatizing a generation of
No,
children.
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I didn't care. I'm like, whatever. Who cares?
We probably should have reviewed the animated film. Would have driven you completely insane.
God. Okay.
No,
Well,
I'm
too
kidding. I
late for
won't.
that now.
I know, I'm kidding. All right. And then this is where we sort of see a shift in Sam's attitude. I think in the first hour, I think he's acting more tolerable than he did in the first film. Like honestly, substantially more for me. I don't know how you felt about him. What do you think about him in the first half of the movie, like compared to the first movie?
He's fine. I'm indifferent about all the characters in this movie. He's the protagonist. He didn't pull that sit on my lap crap. He is a perfectly tolerable guy in this movie, you know.
Hmm.
Perfectly fine. I could show my son to this guy and say, "Hey, be this guy." It's totally fine.
Yeah. And I wanted to draw a comparison between part of that lap scene in the first movie where, remember when Bumblebee drives away because Michaela says, why does he turn it back into this piece of crap Camaro?
Mm-hmm. I do remember when yeah.
Yeah. And how does Sam react when Bumblebee drives away?
Oh, he's blaming Michaela for it. You had to insult the guy.
Yeah, blame Michaela. $4,000 just drove off. He's calling his new friend, his property essentially because he cites how much he cost. Um, and then
Yeah, of course.
just drawing a comparison to that in the second film when Optimus dies, what does Sam do?
Does he scream no again? I don't remember.
Actually, he doesn't when he literally dies. But I'm talking about after they get away from the fight scene, Leo's hounding him about uh him being involved essentially, and then Sam just tells him to shut up essentially.
Yeah, oh man, if you want to go, you can go.
Yeah, and I find it really interesting because I've always thought Leo was just acting like how Sam did in the first movie, and now Sam's getting a taste of his own medicine, and he's just like,
Yep.
you know what, this is not productive at all.
Yep. He's just like we gotta just move on.
Hmm. Um, and then this always shocked me in this film. I was like, Transformers films always have the reputation of just like, oh, they never stop for anything. They're always just constant action, action. No time for thinking or emotions. I think we get that in Revenge of the Fallen. I think we get
Yeah, we do.
some grieving and the military's in disarray because of Optimus's death, which we see in this scene. And then Sam and Michaela, I think, get this nice scene with Bumblebee. Um, just hanging out for a minute, just taking in everything that's happened. At first, Sam says, I'm going to turn myself in. Michaela and Bumblebee think that's a bad idea. But then he gets the gears going. He's like, okay, maybe we can figure this out.
Yeah, well, yeah. Got it,
This
got
is
it.
all. Yeah, sorry.
This is all grieving, all the good grievings that we need to have to they to be honest, it's a 2.5 hour movie. You need to give kids time to pee.
Yeah.
So you got to put this in here.
This is all basic stuff that if this was the first Transformers movie, I'd probably just be nodding my head and going, yep, this is about what I expected. But it's all stuff I thought was missing in the first film, and now that it's here, I'm like, I'm kind of impressed, which is probably not impressive, but I'm a little intrigued that Bay is willing to put all the stuff in the movie at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Any more thoughts? Any thoughts on that stuff? Any more thoughts?
Nope. It's no first hour of Avengers Endgame, but it's still good.
Yep, that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
And then.
Oh yes, his problem-solving skills.
Yeah, and this is just me sort of talking about in the first film, what is Sam's clever moment in the first film? I don't think he has one, right? Oh no, I'm sorry, he does. I get he technically does. I'm trying to think that through. I'm trying to remember why I wrote this slide. No, essentially just the first film he does the whole oh, if the cube will kill Optimus, maybe it'll kill Megatron, and then he does that and it works. And...
Yeah.
Yay.
Yay.
Where
Stay
to me
safe.
the scene in the second film where he has to save his parents. It's just the only difference I think is just that there's the personal stakes going on there where he's just trying to save his parents. I mean, obviously Megatron, blow up world, whatever.
Yeah.
But again, I'm just sort of pointing out that the second film does. First of all, the second film does just have more of Sam just trying to take charge and actually solve the problem as opposed to the first film, which I think is just throwing him around the whole time and he's just kind of going from scene to scene, not really knowing what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, he's like, okay, we got to find the MacGuffin for this movie, so we got to do it.
Yeah, and that's not even me knocking Sam in that instance. That's just me saying that the screenwriters wanted to give Sam more agency in this film, which I find interesting.
Yeah, good for them. It's almost like each character has a reason for being there. Can you believe it?
I know. It's almost like they wanted to use their actors this time.
Wow, who knew?
And then this does climax for me in the most emotional scene in the franchise. In
You
terms of
can't go, Sam.
hmm?
Oh no, I was just gonna say something funny. Go for it.
No, no, go for it. I mean, well, yeah, go ahead. Say your joke. Make your joke.
Okay. Oh no, Sam, you can't do it. Can't do it. I'm like, Freddie, this is the second film. I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Now you can go ahead.
oh yeah. Well, just this is why I love this movie. This just because I think it just in terms of a pure like just on a character level, this is the most interesting. Not interesting. This is the most emotional scene in the movies. I think when we get to a later movie, I think you know which one. I
Uh-huh.
might find some of like the theming and the politics more emotional and interesting, like more emotionally resonant than this on its own. But just on its own and how in terms of how Sam's been set up in this film, the time the film's given Sam to go through the emotions that he's gone through, I always find this scene surprisingly moving. Just the way that the dad plays the scene, the way what's his name again? Kevin Dunn plays the scene as very genuine, very emotional. Where and I just I the thing I can't wrap my head around, and this will probably be easier to explain once we get into the other movies, is just when Bay does emotions, even in the fourth movie, which you know why I'm referencing that, it does feel a little bit just like Bay's just going through the motions, just doing what he needs to do to get through the project. Well, here, I want to say this feels like surprisingly genuine, like this is coming from a place where Bay actually does mean this character arc. Um, Maybe not. Maybe the actors are just selling it, and Bay's just on top of his game and making it look like he's taking it seriously. I find it funny that Nostalgia Critic just did his review about on Click, and he used that phrase: "You can fake being serious, but you can't fake being funny." Maybe this movie's exemplary of that. Um,
Yeah.
the same way that Click is. But yeah, just in general, and then I also just love the I sort of just love the way that this plays into that theme of that coming of age story and the way that Sam's growing up and like I know here's the detail I like is that the dad does try to take control of the situation, does try to lead them, where he thinks they should go. But Sam's the one that knows what's going on, and he just tells his parents what to do to be safe, and then he tells them he has to go do what he needs to do. Um, for a film with no script, and I'm not saying that this is not clever storytelling. This is not like, oh my god, I can't. How did they think of this? It just feels very direct and very genuine. It doesn't. I don't feel like I'm being talked down to in these scenes. The way that we will in future Transformers movies, and even the previous film. When the previous film tried to be emotional, it just felt so phony. Any thoughts, Tommy?
I mean, I just kind of wish that it was more of an earned moment, but otherwise it's good. Like
I think it's
they should have just.
earned. It's barely in the movie, though. Sorry, go ahead. You go ahead.
I mean, I'm just saying, if you made the parents part of the journey before this moment, it might have been earned, but no.
Yeah,
But
I think that's fair. I'm praising this moment that was essentially set up in the first scene of the movie, which happened 2 hours ago at this point.
yeah,
But I guess I'm just surprised to see the film even address it at that point, because it's like especially since the parents disappear after the first 90 minutes of the first film, they're out of the first movie at that point.
hmm
No, I'm always willing to accept that as a criticism um, of this situation of just like, yeah, I'm basically praising the movie for setting something up in one scene early on and then paying it off in the end. But hey, that's better than some Transformers movies, right?
that's true. That's true. Hey, that's very true.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of what else to talk about. Um, Honestly, I think that's all I need to cover for this. We can just have the more candid conversation in a minute here.
Okay.
Um, I guess I'll just try to bring it back to that question at the beginning of just. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna ask you this one. Sorry, Tommy. One more.
That's okay.
um, with the
It's not here yet. We're
climax,
good.
I find it. There's something about the climax I want to talk about again, sort of tying it back to that whole thing about um, relationships, death, and violence. In terms of the violence part of that, and like how much we value violence in blockbuster films, because most blockbuster films have violence, right? To me, Revenge of the Fallen I'm not praising the film for doing this. I'm somewhat criticizing it, but I'm just going to explain it more in a more neutral way. So the climax of the film is Sam is able to get that matrix of leadership thing into Optimus that revives Optimus. And Sam's been blaming himself for Optimus's death up to this point too. Um, I always think it's sort it's sort of a funny thing. I think he's blaming himself because he thinks that if he did help Optimus earlier when he asked him to, this wouldn't have happened. But he's taking responsibility, trying to fix the situation, resurrect Optimus if he can. He does. So to me, that's the climax, right? Sam is able to get through get through all those obstacles, resurrect his friend. To me, the story's over at that point, right? You don't have to agree. I'm just saying that's the climax of the story. Like literally, the climactic moments of Sam shoving a knife into Optimus's chest, or a little stabby dagger thing. But then we still watch a battle scene at the end. We still have to watch Optimus go fight the bad guy at the end. We can't just be it can't the climax of the film, the epic conclusion can't just be someone resurrecting their friend because of love. It has to be, they have to. Is it all in here? We still have to go watch Optimus fight and rip off his brother's face. So what do you think about that, Tommy? Do we need to see this fight, or?
Oh, of course we need to see this fight. It's what we paid for.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so it should
Why
be
not?
so we're letting the audience demand for violence dictate that, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, they have to defeat the Fallen or something. They have to.
Yeah,
They
I
have
agree
to
with
have the
you.
robots fight.
I agree with you. If this fight wasn't in there, the audience probably would have ripped out the projector, to quote Stewart on his old review. But I've always found this climax interesting in that, because I don't feel that way about any of the other Transformers climax. I don't think any of them could stop before the big final battle and the story's concluded. I usually think the stories are concluded in those final battles. But here I kind of feel like, yeah, sure, the Fallen's been the villain the whole time, but our focus has been on Sam's redemption story. I did hear one. I was told an interesting take on this when I taught this class to some friends, and one of them did say like they could see it almost as like Sam is transferring his character agency into Optimus, and then Optimus just takes over from there. So I think that's kind of interesting. Because there's obviously, just thematically, there's just supposed to be this connection between Optimus and Sam by the end of the film, illustrated by this final shot of the movie, sort of like posing them as equals, posing them as partners in this battle. So I could see that.
Well, you need to give some.
No, go ahead.
The point is, you need to have the robots fight, and you need to give the humans something to do, and that's what they did for this climax. It's perfect.
But trade-off, right? I mean, they're not doing it at the same time. It's like Sam does his thing, and then Optimus just goes and does his thing.
Oh yeah, they got to tag team it.
At least in the first film, I could. Okay, maybe it's the same thing, but like I sort of understand it a little more in the first film conceptually as a climax of like literally Optimus trips Megatron, and then Sam's able to shove the cube in his chest. Like to me, that's more of a. I guess maybe you're right. Both things include Sam shoving something into the main robot leader's chest. So, dude,
why not?
Tommy, it's ring theory, because in the first film, Sam has to hold the cube up to put it in Megatron, and in the second film, he has to stab down into Optimus. But the Autobots are the good ones who we think of being as like above, and the Decepticons are the this is a lot. I can keep going. It's a lot of fun, but all right. So just to make this feel like I had some kind of point to all of this, why don't you help me fill out this chart real quick? And let me know, what do you think each film cares about? Do you think the first, so I have 4 subjects. You can come up with some other ones if you want. Does the first film care about parent-child relationships, or does the second film care about parent-child relationships?
First one, no. Second one, yes.
All right. Put that in the first one. Romantic relationships?
Both.
Both? All right. Put that in both. The death of a friend, parental figure, leader, comrade. Yeah.
Second movie.
Second movie. Oops. And then we didn't really touch on this time, but you can just kind of give me your general reaction. The robot-robot relationships.
Both.
You think both films care about them?
Yeah, in a way, yeah.
Yeah, you get some camaraderie in the first film. You get that scene of
Yeah,
them grieving Optimus in the second film. Yeah,
of course.
just curious. I would honestly put it in neither, but this is your chart. You can do what you want. I think you can see that. Ah. All right, Tommy. I hope that was too painful. What did you, let's just talk about it now, like human beings.
Okay, my thoughts first.
Yeah, go for it.
I think this movie is actually really better than the first one. They kind of go a little further with it. I really like the soundtrack for the movie. Just listening to the Fray and the Green Day and Linkin Park. Like the soundtrack, I think is the best out of the two of them. Great action.
It's the one I bought.
Um, the one you bought.
I bought this. I bought this
Um,
one soundtrack. I didn't buy the first one soundtrack.
it's much more of a cleaner script in this one than in the first one.
Wow, that's some fighting words there. People, I kind of agree with you, which is, but people just so much focus on the writer's strike that was going on when this movie was made that nobody ever gives credit to this script making any kind of sense.
Oh no, it's there's not like the five different storylines happening. It's pretty water. It's pretty like um, um, um,
Straightforward or
straightforward. Yeah, that's what I want to
linear.
say.
Yeah.
Straightforward. Yeah, linear, straightforward. It's mostly focused on Sam and Michaela and their team doing what they got to do, and that's good. So I'd say it's a tad above the first Transformers.
Mhm. And I think more people are being okay saying that because, like, and I say that because, like, you were lambasted if you liked this movie back in the day. Um, I get from a lot of Transformers fans that they do think that this is the best one, which is I find very interesting because, like you said, when in 2009, this is the most hated film of the year. Um, and then even the people I just show the movies to, when they go through the series, this is their favorite one, which I find very interesting. To Sorry, Tommy, did you have more to say, or do you want me to start going off? Tommy?
Go off, Greg. I have to grab my food. So go
Okay.
off as long as you need to.
All right. Cool. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's so weird. You asked me a year ago, this would be better than the first film. We're just talking about first film versus second film. Um, I think it's mostly better though because I'm comparing it to the first film. So like the first film like lowered my standards, but I've come to appreciate the first film a lot. I don't know how well represented that was honestly in the first recording session, but I like the first film for two specific reasons. One, I like just the crazy Michael Bay vision of what his interpretation of a feel good blockbuster is, like what his version of Avengers is, what his version of a Star Wars movie is. Maybe Star Wars isn't the right comparison, but like it's Michael Bay trying to make a Marvel movie, even though Marvel movies weren't even a thing yet. Like that movie came out a year before Iron Man. In terms of MCU Marvel, I know Spider Man, all that, but I know there were Marvel movies up to that point. I'm just saying MCU. It feels like it's Michael Bay trying to do MCU, Spielberg, ET, like he's trying to make a feel good movie, and he doesn't get it because he doesn't sympathize with that audience's point of view. He doesn't understand why people like Marvel movies, why people like ET. And maybe he gets why people like ET, but he does not like Marvel movies. He doesn't like the he doesn't get the sincere appreciation. And I'm not speaking for it either. I'm not saying like, oh, he's just not getting it. I'm just recognizing he doesn't like the things that nerds like. He doesn't like things that geeks like, I should say. Geeks of franchises, he doesn't get it. I think we all are in agreement on that at this point. Um, which is why I find this film so interesting because he leans so far out of the emotions in the first film, whether intentionally or not, and then this one he's leaning more into it. Whether that became because he was more confident this time with it, or what. This whole thing actually, I I agree with Tommy for the most part, just on this being a better written film from a character point of view. Like, just the characters are way better written this time. They have more engaging arcs this time. Well, okay, I say that, but at the same time, I think Michaela's completely thrown to the side in this movie. At the same time, she's thrown to the side in the first film, but they're like Megan Fox is getting something out of that performance, or something is getting out of that performance with her that I really connect with in that first movie that I find fascinating. Um, so I think she is just reduced to the supportive girlfriend in this film for the most part. She still has some badass moments that I think are fun. Um, but again, I guess the way I would describe Revenge of the Fallen is this is the movie I expect the first time, but now I'm appreciating it more because the first film kind of starved me for that. So how do I feel about it now? I still pretty much love it. I think the major thing that this film has against it is I do think the writer's strike is affecting it in terms of how the layout of the story is plotted out in the end. Of just like I want to say the lowest part of this franchise is in this movie, but The Last Night exists, so we'll get to that eventually. But in terms of a moment in this franchise where I know that the writers have no idea where this is going, Bay has no idea what they're doing right now, is basically when they're in the museum. Like, I just get a feeling, and kind of when they're hanging out in the desert, it does feel like it's a bunch of people sitting around not knowing what the next plot point is and just trying to figure out where it is, which it could be funny in like a subversive way, but I do think they're just playing it as we don't know where to go, we don't know what's going on. So plot wise, it's so hard to decide which one's worse because I do think the first one is just out of control with the plot, and that one is making it up where it's going along, but they always know when to go to the next thing. Where this one it kind of feels like they don't know where to go sometimes, in terms of just how the movie's put together. So, but at the same time, I think everything that the first film dropped, this film is picking up. I do think that this film is dropping everything that was working in the first film, especially down to just the pure spectacle of it all. That was the one thing I think I didn't express very well in the first video is the first film spectacle I still think is worth appreciating, just in terms of the effects and how they're done. Where this one, it's still pretty cool. Like, God, that forest fight is amazing visually. The desert stuff looks good. But I just think if you've seen the first film, it's like you've seen the effect, you've had that impact, and all you have left is the story and the characters. And for what it's worth, I think this one kind of has some decent story and character stuff going on. But I think that's honestly why a lot of people didn't like this the first time around is because when it was new is because they, I guess they wanted better spectacle, more impactful spectacle from the first film, and they didn't get that. And the story stuff probably just wasn't strong enough to like win them over on that side of the film either. So I think these two films are fascinating companion pieces because just Sam in the first film to me is so insufferable, and then this one I think he's really gone through a redemption arc for me of just taking on that responsibility. And the film overall, like I have to acknowledge, does just play it as, oh, he took on this responsibility, now he's a man. It's pretty straightforward in that regard, but I do think that there's some moments that sort of question forcing a kid like this to be in this situation that I find kind of interesting. And even though he makes it out in the end okay, was it still a fair thing to put him through? And I think we're going to be talking about that a bit with the next film. But yeah, I could go in circles about this forever. I think this film is, in terms of Transformers films, again, if you're not interested in this franchise, then don't even go there. But, and I think this film, for the most part, has picked up an audience, finally. I think people are appreciating it for what it is. I can't understand throwing out, I'm trying to think how to explain this. I find it really fascinating that this one is still sort of treated as the default. Oh, Transformers 2, that's the worst one. I don't, to be fair, I guess I think The Last Night's the worst one, but we'll get to that when we get to that. It is. Like I'm not gonna be able to convince myself that I like The Last Night any more than the first four movies. But there is, yeah, I think there's something really interesting in this film, and yeah, I'm a little surprised. I don't know. I shouldn't be surprised anymore. It seems like everybody I show the first two movies to, they like the second one more. So yeah, I like Transformers 2 a lot. It's funny because I probably like them equally, the first two movies at this point, just because I'm so engaged with the Michaela stuff in the first movie and just sort of looking at it as a piece of blockbuster cinema. But like, if you're asking me which movie do I have more like um, like a regular movie relationship with, in terms of like, oh, I like this movie because of the characters and the story arc that happens. It's Transformers 2. I think by far the first one has nothing really satisfying in it, um, for me, in terms of like a general story arc level, um, and then this one does. So I would go Transformers 2 for the most part.
Okay.
All right, hope that was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I got a couple recommended readings for next week. We got uh, do we have the Freddy Got Fingered review from Red Letter Media, very crucial to next show. And
Mm.
but do not watch this review if you have not seen the film *Malignant*. Do not watch the *Malignant* Red Letter Media review. Do not spoil *Malignant* for yourself. If you like horror
Don't do it.
movies, just go watch *Malignant*.
Watch
But if you
*Malignant*. Recommend.
But if you don't have time for either of those things right now, you could just watch the Freddy review, or don't watch either. They're just sort of for fun. I will provide the context we need for why I'm referencing these reviews in the next video. Tommy, any
Mm-hmm.
last comments?
Nope, I'm good.
All right. Thanks for joining us, guys. I hope you'll see you for the next one, Dark of the Moon, Auteur Theory.
Ooh, whoa.